people will remember this period in our lives. I think I would like to start by saying that if you look at, we say that dreams should be lived and life is meant to be explored. So if you look at that, going back in time, that we have seen that the entire way that how management has come into the being, the way the management literature focuses on, we have seen that people right from the times of, Taylor, we have looked at the different theories of management. We have understood how, management was, historically, what all took place post-industrialization. So I was thinking that today I will take you a little away from the books and I'm going to talk about some of the lessons that we have learned and from nothing but this COVID-19 pandemic. So in that, few of these words like, social distancing, contact tracing, the different ways that people are handling the disaster management, some of these words are very new to us. Social media had come into the being in the last 15-20 years, right from the 90s when email started and the globalization took place. And from then we have seen a depression. Of course, 2008, you saw a big recession that happened. And then we have seen the fast pace in which social media, became very important. And today we cannot imagine a life without a Twitter or even today that the kind of interaction that we are having from a distance. But did we ever think that social distancing will become so important? I was looking at the news in the month of March. Just before it became a global, concern and it was announced to be a pandemic, life was going in a very different direction. We had our dreams, we had our goals. Young people were writing board examinations. Specifically, if you look at India perspective, lot of youth looking at their new career, new jobs, lot of young entrepreneurs who were trying to set up their own businesses. So we had different dreams. We had political issues. There were unrest in the overall. If you look at within the country, there were other issues that people were facing. But what happened? How things change? So whenever there is a big concern that comes, certain other aspects go at the background. It's not as if those issues are not there, but they take a backseat. So if you look at, I have today covered in the next half an hour that I'm going to talk to you, I have covered this whole issues into 7 lessons that we can learn from this COVID-19 that we are witnessing today. And if you look at, you will see almost 2 million people who have been affected worldwide and more than 119,000, so large number of people who have lost lives. We have not seen this in these years, at least in the last few decades when I have grown up, right from school, college, we have never seen this kind of a disaster that we are seeing today. And we don't know yet. There is a very uncertainty that is prevailing. So how do businesses learn from there? Because we have seen that if you look at the big top business leaders, if you look at innovators, if you look at how, different companies came up, be it, Steve Jobs, be it any of these, Bill Gates, everybody is built, but nobody has witnessed what we are witnessing today. So we need to also understand that to do that, what we have to do is we have to understand the lessons that we need to learn. So the very first lesson that we need to learn is about the first things first. So in a corporate world, whenever you're faced with a crisis, you need to handle the crisis. So what are the first things that the globe did when this hit? There are some good success stories. If you see that, how Germany handled, one of the things that Germany did that was to get into communicating the problem in the very first, week. Right from the time a woman from Shanghai landed in Germany, and there were an issue, they started communicating to the entire Germans that, it can affect 70% of the people of the German population, and it is going to hit hard. And even if 2% of them we lose, then there is going to be a big disaster in Germany. So if you see, different countries took different approaches. And we know very well that some of the countries who took late decision, I don't even want to get into it, there have been bigger disasters. It's not as if the healthcare management system was not good in those countries, but there was a lack of communication, lack of taking quick action. So what we learn from this, in the very first point that we learn, is that you have to take first things first. So in India, what was the first thing first? They decided that India was a very big country. There are people below the poverty line, more than 30% of people who are below poverty line, a lot of people who are not educated. So you need to have more stricter guidelines. So the kind of approach was, where directions were given, directives were given. So people could stay home, lockdowns enforced, people were given different roles to do. So what do we learn from this in the business? In the business, wherever you're operating, you need to see that how you need to take into consideration that how do you move forward? How do you take the most pressing decisions? So whenever the corporate is undergoing a crisis, even today, like you see different corporates behaving in a different way. Not only are they worried about how they're going to pay the salaries, but they are going to see how they are going to operate if this continues for the next 3 months or 6 months. What's going to happen to the business losses that they encounter? So I think this is one thing that we need to identify. So the very first lesson that we are talking about today is first thing first. Now, the second point that I really want each one of us to ponder today is that not only in business, I'm going to come to business a little later, but what is the biggest lesson that you see, this is point number 2, is lessons from the past. Can we remember our disasters, the history? If we go back, if you look at what happened, the world wars, the depression, the calamities, the big, the malaria, the kind of, issue, the flu, the Spanish flu, you look at Mars. So we have to go back in time to identify where your businesses are going. So even as an entrepreneur, when you are setting up a new business, you need to understand how business failed. What are the things that people do when you fail? What are the things that you do when you want to come up with a novel idea? Why you need to do a lot of review of what has gone by. So if you look at today, here I want to take the example of South Korea. Because when South Korea, why they were more prepared was because in few years, and I think 2005, if you go back and when they had a big, another issue of, another coronavirus which had happened. So from that, what came into the forefront was they were taking more care about their, health care. So they tried to, they had already created a very good map of contact tracing. They had created applications through which they could contact people. So a woman, or I think a person say they have, of course, named her patient number 31, where she went, from there, how she went to the church, from there, what happened. So a contact tracing, the technology was already there. So I think the second point which we really have to understand is basically the lessons from the past. So either when you are setting up as a young entrepreneur, when you are setting up a business idea, you need to understand what has been the failures in the past, what we need to do for a person who are already there in the cycle when the businesses are growing, and there you need to identify what could go wrong so that you're able to be more prepared and you're able to take better decisions. So if you look at, I think what India had done, if you see that this whole thing of digital India, which is today is a big boon to us. So because the lessons from the past was that businesses were not able to operate the way they should operate. So the big drive was to create a digital India. And today what we are able to handle is because of the digital India, the kind of connectivity that we have, the kind of mobile applications, the kind of the communication that we have been able to create. So I think this is a very important lesson. So first thing first was your first lesson. Second lesson is lessons from the past. Look at the history. What went wrong? What happens when disaster hits? What happens to the mankind? It is not just about food or life. It's about life after the pandemic. So it's very important to identify the corporates have to imagine that they are not going to have a rosy future all the time. This third number that I want your attention is change is constant, and we all know that, this is such a word that we are hearing constantly about change, that it is not just constant, it is transformational. It is sometimes revolutionary changes we have seen. You go back, I've talked about in the point number 2 to go back in history. So what we have witnessed is that change, we have to accept the change. And I started by saying that in the month of, even when we were celebrating in India, the festival of Holi, even while we knew that there has to be some kind of social distancing, but we were really not worried or bothered about that it is going to hit India. So nobody knew that such a transformational change will come. So how should organizations prepare for the change? So an organization's R&D, research and development, the organizational task force have to be constantly working on what if. The strategy of what if is very important. Nobody knew that today we are all going to be working from home. Nobody knew a month back that there'll be different roles that people will be adapting to. So I think change is something that everybody have to accept. And because although this is very cliched, because we are constantly talking, change is constant, change is fast, change is transformational, but do we really accept change? We do not accept, small changes in our life. But today, look at the situation. We have accepted the change even in our household, the kind of work that we are doing. Everybody in the house has suddenly changed their roles. So within an organization or a business scenario, this is very critical. Change the way that you are operating today. How are you going to change the way you're marketing? How are you going to change the way you have strategy? How do you strategize? How do you take your people along? How do you talk to the people who you are constantly daily meetings and you are instructing them? So can organizations accept that yes, change is going to happen? Today, even the most developed economies, look at what is going on in the US. Who would have imagined that this time they would be going through such a big crisis? It is the most developed, most moneyed, I would say country, and at the top of all countries. But today, even US is accepting, and they can see that many things have to be changed because of this big crisis. Nobody thought that a virus is going to be a next wartime situation. So I think the one lesson, the third lesson why I keep saying is so critical, that individuals have to identify that my life every day is going to be different. And to do that, what I need to prepare. So constantly learning new technology, identifying your different goals are very critical. So through that, I'm coming to the point number 4, which is about innovation and adaptability. This is very interesting. There are so many stories. You must be every day loaded with the information that you see on the television. So I'm not going to give you the same stories, but I'm going to give you a few things that how we have adapted. What are the kind of innovative technologies have taken place? Look at, for example, India. Who could imagine that different roles of people? Who could imagine the people who are running errands? You never looked at the boy who came and delivered food to your place home, or a Swiggy boy who came running and who would perspire in the heat. You would even offer a glass of water. Today, they have become your people who are getting you your groceries, people who are getting you medication. So suddenly the way we are looking at those people have changed. People have adapted to the situation. Looking at, here I want to take the example of, education per se. If you look at that large universities and including, say, Amity University, that we have seen that there are hundreds and thousands of our students. So the best way to interact with them was creating a robust platform where there could be, online interactions, where there could be classes, simulated lectures, practical sessions, a lot of quizzing that happened. So I feel so good that what happens is in this phase, although digitalization, blended learning, which was a norm, which was already happening, we would say that 20% of our curriculum is being, led by blended learning through a lot of interactive sessions, online, MOOCs, open resources. Today, it's become our main way in which we are operating. Today, every faculty member has been trained to work on an online system. So they are delivering lectures, they are interacting with students. Adaptability in the roles. The teachers were not only the gurus who were giving them knowledge, but they have suddenly become healers. Because there has been a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress that not only youth are facing, families are facing, so many people dying in the locality. So there is a lot of, things that are going on in the minds of people, and there is a bit of anxiety. So what teachers have become today, they have also become a psychologist. So not only you have psychologists who are reaching out and helping people who are having issues of mental health or depression, but it is adapting to the different roles. The police people who were already doing the policing, today they are also doing caregiving. They are helping elderly. Look at the way we have adapted to the way we can see that this geriatric population is always on lockdown. Have you really bothered about them? Have you really thought of them, that how do they have lives? People who are disabled, who are living in their houses, suddenly everything has changed. Companies have started innovative wave, whether it is Amazon, Flipkart, their operational systems are changing. The supply chain is becoming suddenly so very important. So I think there is a lot of innovation that how to use technology to reach out to people. So suddenly there is a splur of, applications coming up. And I see that, let me tell you, being in the field of education and corporate coaching and consulting, and also as a psychologist, suddenly I see that everybody is needing some kind of a healthcare guidelines. So you will see a lot of applications which are coming up, a lot of way in which people are operating. And so the entire adaptability is very important. And here definitely to mention that not only the doctors and the nurses who are today your actually the warriors and who are really helping you to change, but basically they are the people who are giving a new life to us. The scientists are doing a lot of fast-paced research. They have adapted to the system. So you cannot wait for a vaccination to come after, say, 6 months. So how do you adapt? How do you look at analytics? If you look at analytics, people, how did this whole concept of, hydrochloroquine come? How did they think of how that BCG vaccination, and there is a remote possibility of, the correlational relation between people being having a herd immunity because of BCG, vaccination. How is this research coming? There is a lot of analytics that's going on, a lot of artificial intelligence that are being used. So teachers are changing, corporate people, how they are working are changing, the way the entire government is working. Suddenly you see a cohesive team, right from the most, the honorable the prime minister to the people down below, including the chief ministers. There is a communication today. So suddenly the interpersonal issues in organizations take a backseat. What is coming up? Solutions to the major problems that we undergo. So I think innovation and adaptability is the lesson number 4. So if you have a quick recap, so your lesson number first was first thing first, the lesson number 2 that we have already seen, lesson number 3, and now lesson number 4, innovation and adaptability. So what do you get at the end of it? At the end of it, we see hope. So once we are able to adapt to that situation, we should come out, the curve should flatten, you should have better health. That is possible. And now number 5. Now, time immemorial. If you look at the past, you look at large number of people who have created history. I would like you to go back in time, right from the time of, say, Buddha and how he was an immortal soul. Today, even what Buddha did in so many years back, 2,500 years back, today also we are looking at what his tenets are. People are following the Eightfold Path. Similarly, if you look at the people of the kinds of, say, Vivekananda, if you look at the more recently, if you look at the way the whole corporate world has changed, whether it is Steve Jobs, whether it is any of the bigger organizations, how these young entrepreneurs came in. What matters is the leadership at the front, who takes you along. So if there is a big storm, who is showing you the way? The leaders. So here I want to really tell you that leaders make a difference, and it is not just the top leadership. It is about lot of new leaders have emerged, if you see. Lot of new emerge in the form of scientists have emerged who are coming out with the latest, if you look at this whole system of pandemic, you have seen that a lot of people who are becoming caregivers, who are helping the societies. So I think there is something called a Robin Hood group in Kolkata where they're going out and helping the elderly to do their errands. So I think leadership at different levels matters. So within organizations and in business, and if any of you who are really interested to look at management as a career and your goal to set up enterprises, it is very important to see who you are choosing as a leader. Or if you are a leader, what do you need to inculcate in you? So you have to not only be a visionary or having a vision, but ability to handle a crisis, ability for decision making is paramount. So if you look at in a large country like India, we have done fairly well. We have done very well. And one of the reasons is not just only the top leadership, how leaders at different levels, different organizations, the social enterprises have responded. If you look at the media, for once, media has played a very, very critical role, and there also the frontliners, the young correspondents, the communication people are playing a great role. The responsible role of a media where the right news reaches you. So it is extremely critical that we have to identify, and your lesson number 5 is definitely leaders make a difference. And when you say leaders make a difference, I want you, each one of you, to just for a second close your eyes and think, who is the leader whom you think as a patron? Who, according to you, within this whole big world, how do you see leadership? And let us see how we need to acquire those competencies and skills. So what is very paramount here, and it is important to note that when I talk about leadership today, I'm also talking about empathy. I'm also talking about love for your community. So leaders in the organizations need to empathize. So what is very important is the behavioral competencies that people need to adapt. A leader has to be a die-hard optimist. They cannot give up. So you need to develop and inculcate in you the optimistic intelligence. So leaders who believe, they have to be like, you must have, many of you who have read may have heard about the Pygmalion effect in management, where you empower your workforce. So here, single-handedly, be it a university, be it a government organization, or a corporate, or a medium-sized industry, cannot operate by a single CEO of the company. You need to have leadership, so you need to empower people. So the leaders make a difference where these leaders are empathetic, where the leaders have the knowledge, where the leaders have the behavioral competency, the leaders who have resilience, the leaders who can see much beyond that the people can see. So in this time of pandemic, what better can be learned from the lessons of the world around? Even how Taiwan, could face and handle the problem, because they went into bulk production of masks. They realized that they suddenly cannot close the economy. So if you look at these case studies, I would suggest that, soon after today's interaction, I suggest each one of you go back and, look at the different cases around you. Look at how different countries are performing, not just in terms of the statistics that we see, that how many people are ill and how many are dying, but what kind of methods that they are adapting. What kind of methods are they choosing to take action? And in an organization, say in a large university like that, suddenly we realize the people who are at the back of our systems, like our information technology people, whom you would not even wish good morning or good afternoon, they are suddenly becoming our the most important people. They are able to give you this kind of connectivity. They are able to help online classes happen. Suddenly, we started taking interest in these online advertisements that we used to always witness and see. So, definitely, decision making is important, and leaders will always be needed. So, leadership, where sometimes these leaders could be also a smart system. For example, you may have today people are talking about creating bots, robots, where they are going to help you in do things. So you can have these computer bots, which is going to do a lot of artificial intelligence thinking for you. So at the end of the day, you still need to make a decision. And in this example, I must always tell you that decision is important. Suppose there is a big turbulence and the pilot decides to crash land. Now, what will happen after the crash landing? Will he save lives or will he not? But if he has to still make a decision. So every leader has to take a decision, take a consensus of people, listen to the team, empower people. And the next point, which is very critical, and suddenly the whole world is awakened to it. And I would recollect that every time I would be invited to, talk to people will give topics like, conflict management, productivity, how we can be more successful. Today, people call up and corporate said, how do I create well-being within the organization? How do I see that people don't undergo depression? How do we see that we have a better healthcare system? How do we see we have a better work environment? If you look at, the past, history of management, you will see that, this whole thing of Elton Meyer, where he's talked so much work has been done in Hawthorne experimentation, where people talked about the working environment. Suddenly, the emphasis today after this kind of an attack will move towards cleanliness, move towards caregiving, move towards a good healthcare system in the country. Suddenly, insurance sector will boom because people realize that there is going to be larger problems. So what we need to understand that at the core of our strategy in organizations, you have to look at the well-being of not just your people, not just of your community, not just of your country, but not just of your global community, but for the earth as a whole. Suddenly we see so much of I was seeing so many Facebook posts about the beautiful nature, the pollution level going down, air quality improving. But did we ponder about it about 3 months back? We were talking so much about climate change for the last so many years. But this novel coronavirus created a havoc and left us thinking. So suddenly the areas that we are looking at is, I have spelt with another in the being, there are two eyes, and where I'm talking about, it is suddenly becoming extremely critical. That people need to identify that if you need to run a business, if you need to create impact, if you need to make money, you need to create well-being, not only within your organization and your community, but for the world. So there has to be some global plan. There has to be a sustainable world. So this is extremely critical. And finally, which we all know at the end of the discussion on my point number 7 that I'm trying to talk about is in this large, beautiful, interdependent, connected world. We have been talking about this connected world for a very long time. We were very happy, caught in our social media, talking about our lives, talking about our holidays, talking about what we do, what we like, what coffee do we drink, where do we go out for socializing. But suddenly we are seeing a very different world today. What we have realized that not only Wuhan having a virus impacted the whole world, but we have realized that there has to be so much of connectivity. So many businesses are at a standstill today because some equipment which had to come from Korea, something which had to come from China, some of the exports that has stopped, some of the travel that has come to a standstill. Because of that, there have been huge business losses, but we have gained in terms of a different set of ideology that we are going to live with. We are going to see a very different world tomorrow. We are going to see, and I am also very optimistic about the way people change in time. So why do you think people are going back into spirituality? People have realized that yes, it is important to acquire wealth, but it is also important to create overall a sustainable world. If you do not create a sustainable world, not by giving education and healthcare, you cannot have a very prosperous humanity. You cannot have, it's so scary. This kind of a pandemic is so scary that it can possibly, create such a big havoc that nobody can exist. Or we take a big lesson and realize how we can have a very good, interdependent, and a good and a happy connected world. And at the end, what I must tell you that I believe, and in this whole journey, that I feel that there will always be a sunrise. There will always be a new tomorrow. There will always be a happier world. So what we need to do, if we want to change the world, we cannot change the world. We cannot change even our township that we are living in. We cannot change our community around us. We can change ourselves. So if we start changing the way we are looking at how to become more successful as a business professional, living with your ideologies, living without our own values, being committed, if we take an oath to be committed to become a person who contributes to the organization, keeping in mind the human values, keeping in mind the overall big, global, truths, I think we will create a better world. And I must tell you that I'm happy to tell you that about 2 years back, I had published a book called The Power of Positivity Optimism and the Seventh Sense, and many of you may have read this book. So suddenly I have received so many calls from corporates. They've been telling me that how do we now deal with it? And you'll be happy to know that I've talked about this whole concept that we can have within ourselves, which is your optimistic intelligence, which will keep you going. So you need to build. So as a business person, with all these 7 lessons, you need to build within yourself that 7th sense and the optimistic intelligence. Thank you. Sachin, over to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a very enriching session, and I really like the extra I in the well-being, because somewhere I is also important to take care before somebody else. Thank you so much for the enriching session, ma'am. Dear participants, we are open to the questions now. You can post your questions in the Q&A. Meanwhile, ma'am, I have received 2 queries.
Okay.
The first is how we can remain optimistic in panic situation.
Okay. It's a great question, but a very tough question, I must say. That I think here I will start by talking about self-management. If you look at that in progressive worlds, that if we stop having a system where you have to be coerced to do something, somebody who directs you to do something. So in order to have an optimistic understanding, first of all, what is very important is doing your things by your own self. Trying to maintain a routine. Trying to have a lot of, sleep. There are a few things which are very critical. You need to create around you. You already are very connected to a social, media. You're already connected to your friends and family. So conversation helps. Communication helps. But at the end, at the core, is your own understanding that how do I deal with the situation that I have. So accepting. Here I always talk about the serenity prayer. That change what you can change. Accept what you cannot change. And learn to differentiate between the two. What we cannot change now is that what crisis has already hit us. That we cannot change. But what can we change? We can change by keeping the social distancing. We can change by accepting the rules and regulations of the lockdown, listening to the government, cooperating with the people around us. So I think all this will help us to focus on our and be more optimistic.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question that I have received is, money is always been a problem in setting up the businesses.
Yes.
Can you share some thoughts around it in managing this?
I think it's a great question, and I think it is at the core of every entrepreneur. I have been advising a few accelerators and innovators and people who have done startups. One of the biggest issue that they face is what is going to happen is when I have a loss. Forget about even creating money or creating wealth. It's about how do I sustain. But remember, one of the big answers to it is do not walk alone. I'm not saying you need to create business partners, but you need to create a robust system of network around you. You need to create people who will give you a lot of synergy. So great if you have an idea, move on. But you will only be able to come out and come to a bigger platform when you have a great network. So one of the very important aspects is your the relationship networks that you build when you are an entrepreneur. So not only fundraising, but even your idea to go ahead. Who will ask you the right questions? Why your business proposal is very good. So it is very important to create that network who are not only going to act as a cushion or a buffer, but also going to give you the right advice. And that's how you'll be able to either manage your resources or create more wealth coming into your own business.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, I think someone who has already taken admission at RMIT Gurgaon. I'll be joining MBA and wants to take marketing and sales. Can you please guide us as there is a lot of pressure in sales? How can I be stay calm and yet perform?
Uh, well, I think first of all, congratulations that you're going to join a new phase of your life and you're taking a new journey. And all of us today, my heart goes out to this population, the youth, because in all these years, last 20, 25 years, I've been spending with this age group, a lot of potential. And what this age group of 18 to 25 are facing now, nobody has ever faced in life. Because you have not only seen good things, you have seen the worst things. You've seen a pandemic. You are going to enter into the corporate world when a pandemic has hit us. So understand the way the business are going to operate are going to be different. But let me answer to your question related to sales and marketing. I see both are the sides of the same coin. Because unless you sell your idea, you cannot market it. You cannot market a product. So I see it as sales takes you to marketing. It's not marketing taking you to sales. So if a person to understand a brand, for example, we say brand, what is a brand? Brand is a one-time commodity. So unless you are able to sell your ideas to the people whom you are connecting, so the sales force becomes the most important touch points for the organization because they are the voices. So I would suggest that you should look at a more holistic approach of looking at both sales and marketing. And even, now the boundaries are disappearing. Nowadays, people are getting from sales and marketing to human resource to consumer behavior. So I would say a more holistic approach would be the answer.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is very interesting one. Ma'am, in this pandemic situation, how student can get a job and sustain that job?
Getting a job is something which is, I think, one of the things that I want to talk about when you talk about getting a job. First step is faith. One of the things that you have to stick on is your faith and your competencies. I suggest that, a lot of youth are talking to me, including my students, are telling them one of the things that they have to do in this period, because this is a very turbulent time. This is a period where they can invest a lot on themselves, their own growth. So what are the things that they need to do in these 3 months? Whether it is learning a new language, which is going to help them in their market, whether they want to learn a new, programming, where they want to learn a new artificial intelligence tool or modeling, or where you want to understand and talk to people. The best thing that you can do today is to talk to the people, because corporate life and most of these senior people have a little more time than they have from the usual. So choose your mentor quickly. Try to choose a mentor in the corporate world. Choose a mentor in your academic world and try to talk to them. Take guidelines. Don't stop. You need to look at your curriculum vitae. You need to look at your resume. How do you need to upgrade your resume so that you will be wanted even after this? Remember, today, many more young leaders will be needed. Corporates are going to open up newer verticals where they are going to look at crisis management. Government always talked about disaster management to be in the forefront. We were always talking about the 2% of money going into CSR. So there are different kinds of jobs which are going to open now. And I see that happening soon after this crisis is over. So I think this is how you need to prepare. And first, but it starts with your faith. Yes, I can do it. Like I said, believe in your seven sense that I am able to do it, develop your competencies.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, what are your views about the coming scenario of market and jobs for the new MBA aspirants?
You know what? I said that we are going through a very transformational times that you have seen that not now, but from the last 5 years, we have been talking about the nature of work, right? People have been talking of a lot of artificial intelligence and take away a lot of work. But do you realize a lot of new job opportunities have come? Even the internships that I would suggest that, for example, in this, a lot of people who want to keep themselves into a better perspective of career should join online internships. Because once you do a good internship, it is a test that you are able to work well. So nowadays, because in the last 2 months, most of the top banking industries, if you name the top JP Morgan and many other consulting, KPMGs and many of them, I don't want to name a few, many of them have opened up to online internships. So which will give a path on which what are the kind of new jobs that are coming. So following the different companies, what they behave, how they behave is going to be very important. Look at your own skill. It is, of course, very important to know your own knowledge, know what you're capable of, but it is important for adaptability. Like I talked about adaptability, even in the lessons to be learned, you look at all these 7 points. All them will take you to the places. The corporate will know here is a person who can get a good, could be a great person, a great young leader who can come and change the organization, who can bring more, productivity, more sustainability. It'll be very interesting to also observe that how our Indian corporate sector has behaved in this period of 1 month. I think, although we are going through a little turbulent times, but let me tell you, as soon as we open, there's going to be a lot of energy that will come in to make the businesses grow. So when you want the businesses to grow, you need people. So you will always need people. So I feel India, we are very good at. We are going to be very good. And you have already heard about the problem that Japanese companies taking away businesses from China. So they'll be looking at new markets. So India will become a very fertile market. So I hope this answers your question query.
Thank you. The last question is, what are the avenues at MIT Gurugram for learning management and excel in it? Any tips on the entrepreneurship if I want to do?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Amity University, and nice, it's a great question. If you look at Amity, we are a research and innovation-driven university. And I was giving an example of this online classes. We have already created a very interesting blended learning model. We have centers of excellence like centers of big studies, financial analytics. We have centers like stem cell research. Where students, it is a practice, research, and outreach center. The students are able to acquire knowledge, they practice, and they connect with the government as well as the corporate sector. In the university, you also get an opportunity to do minor courses. For example, a journalist who want to do journalism is able to also take a minor in management. So there are different avenues through which you can create your area where you want to create an expertise. You want to create your understanding about what you want to do. A student of management typically not only goes for industrial visits or a corporate connect series, but they actually get to work with the live projects. We have a great, alumni, network where, a lot of our alumni are actually coming physically to the campus. They're online as we speak. In fact, a lot of my successful alumni have been mentoring my students in the lockdown. So how we are able to utilize it because of a very robust ICT in the university, information communication is superbly done, a kind of great student life. The club and activities with students are empowered. Some of my clubs which are operating on the universities are all student led. So this is the best way, management classes can happen. So I feel that management is when you actually go and experience. So experiential learning is the key, and this is what we can provide you at the university, especially for management. And through that, you can build your entrepreneurial capabilities. Remember, entrepreneurship is not about only a new novel idea. It's about getting to generate money. It's about ability to run that into the business. You need to scale it up. So please remember, many startups which fail is because they are just looking at an idea and are excited about it, passionate about it, but they never look at how it will turn into a business, how it can be scaled up. So these are the kind of things that you're taught, that how to become an entrepreneur at the university.
Ma'am, we are receiving a lot of questions, but I think due to short of time, this would be the
We
last
have
one.
about we have about
Yes.
7-8 minutes, so we can
Yeah.
take one
So
or two.
the last question that I would like to take is, will MBA in healthcare management a good choice as a career post pandemic?
I think it's a great question. Uh, See, what I would suggest is, I mean, education, or it doesn't act like a reaction, but healthcare has always been very important. Because let me tell you, our students of public health, nursing, clinical psychology, or any of those students who are doing courses related to even forensic sciences, any of them, they all get a job. But I think what is very important to identify is how do you contribute, so a lot of new learnings will come. A lot of new people who are doing research, for example, in biotechnology, where a lot of people were thinking that it's going to be a very tough area and we are not interested in biotechnology, suddenly a door is opened. So a lot of professionals will start doing courses in microbiology, biotechnology. There is a huge requirement. And there would be a lot of relationship between management and healthcare management, where people would be not only doctors who will be working, but you will be have to running these hospitals. If you look at even this example of COVID, you will see that even now creating those beds, it's not just the doctors working at it. Operationally, how are you going to make the hospitals become very COVID friendly, where you're able to treat, you're able to take care? So definitely healthcare management. How are you going to look at the processes? How are you going to make it a more hygienic place? How do you reduce infections in the hospital? How do you look at the way you are connecting to the customers? How do you look at the third party insurance covers in the hospital? So definitely, yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you, ma'am, for the enriching sessions. Can we have your concluding remarks?
Yeah, thank you, Sachin. I think, first of all, let me tell you that this 1 hour that I've spent in these last over a month now that we are in lockdown. So I must tell you, this is one of my happiest days that I'm able to reach out to so many people, participants, amazing participants who are so motivated to do something. Because, I think that it starts with that your willingness to do something. Like, that is the first lesson that we are talking about, first thing first. You have taken yourself as first thing first, that you want to improve your own lives. You want to change what you can change. You need to accept what is going around you, and yet you want to create new knowledge. You want to give your ideas. So definitely, I think one of my points that I really want to conclude with is very important. If you are able to self-manage, if you are able to take care of yourself and the people around you, we will be able to make a lot of difference in India. And if the same kind of things are taken to the corporate world, so then businesses are going to boom. And we are looking at, you're going to see, today what I'm saying, in the next 5 years, you will see how India is going to be a land of opportunities. With not only that, if you see that our, not only the economists talking about it, or the way we have talked about the bottom of pyramid, giving more opportunity to people. But remember, people who will be the winners of tomorrow, leaders of tomorrow who would win, would be the people who will take the people along with them, who will empower their people, who will connect to the larger audience, who will create engagement within the workforce. And at the end, to remain happy and have a lot of positive emotion in you, because that will make a lot of meaning tomorrow. So I wish everybody a very good, healthy life. Stay away from the crowd. Be safe at home, and let us all pray that this pandemic is over, but the new beginning happens very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Dear participants, we have continuously webinars lined up. You can please stay tuned to our Facebook pages for the regular updates. Thank you so much.